If you have questions about the proposed half-cent sales tax increase for Brevard Public Schools facilities, you're not alone. The tax appears on the general election ballot that will be delivered soon to absentee and early voters. I'm Matt Reed, and I had questions too, including where would the money go? Who would oversee the spending? And how long would it last? For answers, I interviewed Adrian Laffitte, chairman of Brevard Save Our Students. That's the committee formed to campaign for the tax. Watch. Adrian, thank you for making time for us here today.
My pleasure.
I know you've got a busy campaign underway. Let's start with the campaign. I know you've got a mailer that's going to be going out pretty soon for people who are going to be voting at home by mail or absentee ballot. And you make some arguments in there you mentioned. What are the key arguments that you're making on behalf of this proposed half-cent sales tax for facilities?
Well, what we found out, Matt, is like 80,000 mailers are going to go out at the end of the month, because about half of this county is going to vote on absentee. So we want to make sure that people, when they got their ballot, it was a simple message. The front of it is the same thing you see in our sign, which says vote yes for the half-a-penny sales tax. And the back of it has the 6 reasons. One is it's limited for 6 years.
Okay.
2, we have come up with a list of what we're going to get for every money we're going to get. 3, we're going to have an independent committee reviewing it. 4th, it's good for businesses, and it's also good to help promote the business. 5, about 25% of the income is going to come from people visiting the county.
Okay.
And then finally, it's going to help your property value. So we're trying to make it very simple to say, here's the 6 reasons why you need to vote yes on the sales tax for the schools.
What's the problem this is meant to address? I mean, we hear it's a crisis, or we hear, oh no, just let them deal with it, deal with the problems. Help me understand, if I'm a viewer at home, what's going on in the schools that would warrant this kind of proposal?
The problem started probably about 6 years ago, when the school saw a decline in 65% of the amount of money they get for capital. Capital money is used exclusively to do building facilities, repairs, buses, security, and computers.
When the air conditioning goes out.
When the air conditioning, the roof, or if you get a pipe, break in the middle of the school and it start bubbling, you got to go fix it.
Tires wear out on a school bus.
Yeah, and then the life of a school bus, like your car, is limited, and eventually you have to replace them. So what happened was, when the school district saw a decrease in their income by 65%, they did what most people would do when your income goes down. They went ahead and reduced their expenses. So they went ahead and tried to reduce expenses, but it's still not enough to make up for the difference of losing 65% of your income. It's a lot of money. They're also trying to figure out other ways to raise money, like trying to do advertisement through their website and trying to find other ways to make money. But finally, it got to the point, like you and I would do, is that we need another job, because this is not working, and here comes the sales tax. So the sales tax is the equivalent of, once you have reduced your expenses, once you saw your income go down, I'm going to go after and get another job so I can make up the difference of that 65%. So the money is going to go to do the repairs that have been deferred over the last 6 years, because there hasn't been enough money to go do them.
So roofs wear out.
Air conditioning,
I guess
go
this
break.
isn't for buses necessarily, because it's statutorily at camp, but there are other things that have to be replaced, computers, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and then you got, in a lot of the schools, the air conditioning system, has been failing.
Okay.
Sometimes you say, yeah, I can replace a compressor, but sometimes you got to replace the whole unit. A lot of the pipes in the system are starting to break, and what they've been doing now is they find where it breaks, they fix it, but they know that maybe 2 months later, they're going to have another section that's going to break.
What they need is a new water main.
And what they need to do is replace the whole pipe, but they don't have the money to go do that.
Okay.
And security also it's important, because now we're trying to make sure there's one single point of entrance for all the schools. It's not like we're going to put cameras or anything fancy. It's just making sure that there is a fence around the school, so that way there's just one entry point.
I see.
Rather than keeping open campuses.
So how much would this raise? For over 6 years?
Our prediction is about $198 million, about $33 million a year. We're also predicting, based on the sales tax, that it's about 25% of it will be coming from the tourists. And the argument we meant to a lot of people that say, I don't want to pay for this, we're going like, well, do you go to Orlando? And they go, yeah. Do you go buy clothes there? Yeah. Do you eat there? Yeah. We say you're supporting their school system. But when the residents of Orlando and some other places come here to go to the beach or go see a launch like we've been having lately, they don't support our school system. And they're going, that's not fair. He says, that's what we're trying to do. And actually, Brevard is only one of 12 counties in Florida that did not have a sales tax for schools.
Wow. One of the questions that I've gotten from a couple of parents, including a parent or two in Merritt Island, where I know you are involved, is they have sports facilities and things that they want to also see upgraded and that kind of thing. Would any of this tax money go to things like sports facilities and new media projectors and things like that, or is?
If we had the tax money for 20 years, then the answer would be yes. But what the school district has done is they have done a priority list by school to try to address those items that need immediate repair: roof, air conditioning, water facilities, safety of the kids, handicap access. So even though, like I said, I'm familiar with what Merritt Island wants, because I worked the concession stands there a lot, and I know that it could be, but unfortunately, that's something that's way down the list, because what's more important is to create an environment for our kids that helps them get educated, and that's the main thing we're trying to do.
And you said that somebody is overseeing this, right? Because if there's this list of things that are out there and is prioritized, how do I know as a taxpayer that it's going to be spent on the things that the school board is saying that it's going to be spent on?
Well, what we did is, like I said, when we first started this campaign, and like I told you earlier, I learned a lot. We found out there was 3 things this community wanted to see before they commit to say we're going to vote yes on a sales tax. One is to make sure we were limited to 6 years. 2, that they had a list of what's going to be spent and the priority. And then the third thing is that there was an independent citizen oversight committee that's going to make sure that the money was going to be spent the way the district said they were going to spend it. And once we put those 3 components together, then we worked it into the language for the ballot so that people knew that this is for real, because once it's in the ballot, it becomes a statute and it becomes a law. So it's not like, oh yeah, I know, as soon as you get the tax, you're not going to have this committee. You can't do that. That committee's going to be there by law, and it's going to be there to the end of the sales tax.
Any new debt to be taken on?
No. The way it's going to work is the money's going to be spent as they get it. So for the first 3 months of the year, there will be no revenue because it gets paid quarterly, which will give the independent citizen oversight committee enough time to establish their parameters to say, here's how I want to operate, here's the data that I need. And then the committee will then be responsible to report on a quarterly basis through the school board and the public how well the school district is doing.
You haven't been involved in politics before, I understand. This is your first campaign of sorts. What do you make of Brevard voters and their outlook on things? I mean, you described 3 things that voters seem to demand something like this. Where does that come from?
Well, it's interesting. I said I have learned a lot, and I don't know that I want to get into politics, but I've learned that you do have to listen to what the public is telling you. We did a lot of meetings, and the feedback that we were getting is when we were first starting for 10 years, says, no way, we don't trust 10 years to be with a school to spend the money for 10 years. So what we learned through the process is that you got to, I was the prior launch director. And the one thing I learned is when I was on council, I had the final authority to say whether we're going or not. And you have to pay attention to what people are telling you. And if you hear some engineer telling you, I don't feel right about this, trust me, you got to follow that gut. So I used that knowledge when I was doing all the speeches that I've hearing the people saying, you know what, we need to build the trust in this community that the school board is going to be spending the money correctly. So let's start in small steps. 6 years is a good start, and if they start doing what they say they're going to do, we have the committee doing it, then we'll turn around and be more adapted to maybe adding more years later on.
So people who want to help, they do believe in their schools, but they're also fiscally cautious, and enough so that they want to see hard and fast measures to regulate how this money is spent and where it would go if they decide to vote for it.
Correct. And they also want to make sure that it's sort of like the money is spent properly, because the other thing we kept hearing is we keep hearing what we're not going to get. We're going to close this, or we're going to delete that, or we're going to get, so they say stop threatening with what you're not going to have. Tell us what we're going to get. So we had to do it.
That's interesting, because for a while there it was, if this doesn't pass, we're going to have to close more schools, or we're going to have to lay people off, which may be true. So it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah, the public wanted to know and say, hey, stop telling me what I'm going to lose. Tell me what I'm going to gain. And then they say, if you're going to tell me what I'm going to gain, don't make it general enough that it's like, oh, yeah, we don't know what this is. Make it there is a list. So when you go and see the list, there's over 43,000 line items in that list. So it's a very comprehensive list that goes to say, hey, here's everything we would do if we had, I think it's like $750 million to do everything that needs to be done. But the first chunk of it is only $198 million.
Those are the high priority things: roofs, pipes,
air conditioning,
things
security.
Like that. Interesting. One of the, I'm going to just hit you with some of the objections that I've heard. In fact, the other night, we'll start with one that came up at a forum or a panel discussion that we had at Eastern Florida State College. And one of the more critical members on that panel said, hey, there's no plan. I had seen the list and thought there was a plan, but what did you make of that? I mean, a long-term kind of capital plan. What did you make of that?
I think, and I know she's not here to defend herself, but I think she was trying to mix operational funds with capital funds.
Okay.
And I think when she was trying to say that there was no plan, I think she was mixing the two. There is a very distinct plan for what we're going to do with the surtax. We have a list. We know how we're going to spend them. We have the priority. And so that's very well defined. I think what she was implying that maybe there is not a plan to say how can I reduce further expenses, like maybe privatizing buses or food or garbage or recycle. And I think that's what she was saying. She hasn't seen that plan, but that what she was referring to refers to the operational side of the budget, not the capital expenditure.
So part of a broader, so she would like to see, as a conservative, a bigger strategy.
A bigger strategy
by a school board to say, hey, look, we're going to try to do this and catch up on facilities, but we need to still continue to be fiscally responsible and conservative going forward. I get that. One of the things you always hear is, well, why not just cut administration? Boy, there must be so many people out in Viera with all kinds of toys that surely we can cut administration to pay for some of this school stuff, right? Yeah,
and to me, that's the other thing that you asked about, the dynamics about the county. What I found out is a lot of people don't look at the facts. They just hear what people say. But when you really looked at it, the Viera has cut over 7% of their staff. They have the lowest ratio of staff in Florida, ratio between students and staff, lower than any other county in the state of Florida. So I think what the message that I've been trying to do to people is says, hey, before you hear somebody say something, maybe challenge the facts and get the data. The data is available. If you go to either our website at bsos14.org or you go to the Brevard Public School website, all the data is there if you want to take the time to go look at it. Now, I think it's interesting. The other thing I found out is this county is a little adverse about going to social media for some reason of trying to get the data. Oh, that's too hard. Just tell me what it is. So I think it's an interesting dichotomy that even though we're moving to a social media environment, a lot of them don't want to take the time to go look for it because it's a little too hard. Oh, I had to make 3 clicks. They want the instantaneous 1 click.
Interesting. Lots of information available to people who demand information, yet it's almost somebody's got to facilitate getting that to those people. That's interesting. One of the issues that's come up again and again, you mentioned it earlier, is trust. You said up in Merritt Island there's a need to rebuild trust in some fashion. Describe that issue. Why?
I think, and I wish I could know the why, but because I mean this has been one of the surprises to me when I took over the campaign to do this, is I think in the past there hasn't been a lot of transparency on how the money had been spent. And I think there was a lot of misinformation out there. And because of that, has created the mistrust that the community has on the district and the school board. And like I said, I'm not going to get into the politics as to why or how that all started, but it seems to me that seems to be the root cause of tell me how you're spending the money and what am I going to get for the money. That never seemed to have been as clear as I've seen it now. I see now where the district has said, hey, here's what we have, here's the money we don't have, here's what we lost, here's what we're using the money for. So I think the final test for the trust will be when the sales tax pass, that the districts start repairing the schools in the fashion they have outlined in the list as verified by the independent committee.
That's one of the things that you hear is, where did the money go? They got all this money during the housing bubble. Revenue was big for every local government. Where'd all the money go? And well, they did spend it on schools. Schools constantly decay and break down. So at least in that part, I can't say as to any other portion of the budget, but you can see buildings wear out over time in this kind of heat and humidity.
Well, I think there's two things. I think when it was good, they were building new schools. They were repairing the schools that needed repair, but at the same time, they were also building up back their capital reserve. So when you looked at what the district did when the money dried up, they immediately stopped doing those projects because they say, I no longer have the money, and they started using the capital reserve to make up for that difference to the point where you ran out of capital reserve.
I see.
So, I mean, it's sort of like what you and I would do when we're making good money. If we're smart, we save some money too. We spend it, but we save it.
What do you make of the school board's debt? I mean, you're a person that came from the private sector. You're surrounded by people that were people from industry and business who have advised the school board for some time. Did they borrow recklessly and get us into trouble with too much debt, or what happened there?
No, I think and I think that's one of those misinformation out there. When you look at the debt that the school took, they took a very responsible debt, and when the interest rates were being lower, they refinanced it to get that advantage, like you and I would do with our mortgage. Sure. So I think they have done a very good job of managing the money to the point where you have the Moody people that have looked at them that rate businesses. Like I mentioned before, I was part of an independent committee, and we, for 9 months, were exposed to all of the books and the financials for the school district. And a few of us said, wow, if we run our business as efficiently as the district has done, I think our stock would be doing really well. And we went there with the attitude that we are the smart business guys, and we're going to tell the district, you don't know what you're doing, we're going to tell you what you need to do. And we were surprised to see that they have really done a very good job of managing their finances.
One of the groups that I was surprised to see did not jump in and endorse this soon, I mean not right away, was the Brevard Federation of Teachers. They seemed to have held back their endorsement for some time. What was the story there?
I believe they were in the middle of negotiations.
I see.
And whenever you're in a negotiation for more money, etc., everybody uses different techniques, like we're seeing now in all the commercials. So I think that's what they were doing. They were waiting to see how the negotiation was going to happen before they made a final decision. I see. So I think it was probably just strategically and political. But they have jumped in, and now they're fully endorsing it.
So they're helping with the campaign?
They are. As a matter of fact, they have been very helpful. They've also been helping doing the sign wavings. They've been doing phone calling, canvassing. So they've been really helpful. Interesting. With that
situation with teachers, to me, is one of the bigger kind of paradoxes somewhat in this campaign, in that you have teachers that are suspicious of the tax, suspicious of where the money's going to go, and yet no one's eaten the costs of having to have budgets drained to pay for facilities like educators have. I mean, that facilities crisis is why they are teaching 6 periods out of 7 instead of 5 out of 7, or why so many of them were laid off, or now there are some places in the district where they're having to try to finesse the class size amendment. And yet there's still that level of, you know.
I think it really boiled down to maybe not getting the message out correctly. I think there was an assumption made that, oh, they obviously do understand it, but I think our teachers right now have so many stuff on their plate that trying to understand the politics behind what happened in 2012 was not their top priority. But I think what we have seen now is that that's completely turned around, and we have full support of the teachers. They're understanding. A lot of our volunteers are teachers. A lot of the parents that are running around talk to the teachers. And one of the things when we're doing like I said, I'm not a political strategist, but one of the things that we did talk to is the reality is the first line of defense for the general public when they say, hey, should I vote on this or not, it's going to be the teacher, because that's who you're going to be talking to. And if the teachers say, no, I'm not, then we're fighting an uphill battle. So we focus on making sure that the teachers understood the message, because they really are our first line of defense. They're in contact with the parents, they're in contact with the grandparents, etc. So
they're the ones in the drop-off line,
in the
bleachers,
bus loop, and
sure.
you know.
How'd you get involved? I mean, I know that you were sort of the schools and others reached out to you. What's your background?
My background is I'm an engineer. I worked for Lockheed Martin for 31 years. I was their launch director for the Atlas program, and I did 30 successful launches in a row. And then I decided to do more of the business development, government relation. And after 31 years, I figured I had enough, and I wanted to try something new. I've always been passionate about education. I've been involved with the schools through the Brevard Space Week.
Okay.
And I'm also helping Merritt Island with their academy. So I've always been involved with the education and sit on a lot of educational board. So when they asked me to run the campaign, like somebody said, I was the only one not looking down at the floor. I was looking up, and they said, oh, so that means you're interested. And I guess I thought it was going to be not so hard, because I said this should be a no-brainer. Why would people not vote to give money to the kids so they have a better education? But then that's when I learned there's a politics side of this. And like I was telling you earlier, this is like running a political campaign without a candidate. And because the issue does not have a mouthpiece, I've become the mouthpiece of the
You're
issue.
the candidate, not so much, but
I've been, it's interesting. I've been in the supermarket when people, you're the guy trying to raise my taxes. I go, do I know you? It's kind of interesting to see that.
Really?
Yeah. And then once you explain to them, they go, oh, that makes sense. And that's what I'm finding out is it's just the education. If you can go one-on-one with everybody, understand that they get it. But the perception is you want to raise my taxes, and there's no real logic for it.
What's next in the campaign? What kinds of things can we expect to see between now and Election Day?
Well, hopefully you're seeing a lot of the signs. We have a lot of yard signs, big signs all over the place. We also have the electronic billboards. And the most important part that we're doing next week is we're doing a mail out to 80,000 absentee voters, because the absentee votes go out next week. So we're going to be doing a drop of about 80,000 flyers with what I described earlier to make sure we get to the absentee voters. And then starting in the middle of the month of October, then we're going to start running TV ads, positive TV ads, to make sure that people understand why they need to vote yes. Similar to what the messaging we're doing.
Right. That's expensive stuff.
Very.
And I understand one of the more helpful groups for you has been the hotels.
Mm-hmm.
The hotel owners have turned out, I mean, business seems to be kind of different minds about this tax, but tell me a little bit about why.
Yeah, we went to the Cocoa Beach Chamber, and we had a presentation where the Hotel Association was there. And once they learned about our issue, the first thing they said, what can we do to help? And prior to that, like I said, I didn't have experience, but one of the, Wayne Ivey told us to say, hey, the first thing you need to do is you can have the best message. If you don't have the funds to give the message, you're not going to get anywhere. So you need to do fundraising. So the Hotel Association offered to run a breakfast for us, and they did a phenomenal job. We had over 120 people. We raised about $35,000.
Wow.
And even to the point that they're still trickling donation, because we pretty much stopped the fundraising effort. We're still taking donations. But even from that event, we're still getting donations, even because it was in July 1st, even like 3 months later.
You have Kelly Slater, who did a video making a pitch for the tax. Anybody else we might see on video here sometime?
McKnight did a video for us.
Who's that?
From the Blackhawk.
Danny McKnight.
Danny McKnight.
Okay.
Yeah. He did a video for us. So we're trying to get different people in the community that went to school here that might do an endorsement. We do have endorsements like from Wayne Ivey, Jack Parker, and then we'll start releasing those towards the end of the campaign. Well,
I think as we heard at our forum the other night, for business, there's a couple of different, I mean, on one hand, they do pay sales tax. They pay, if you're going to pay a lease, there's a tax on the lease. If you're going to build a home, you're going to pay tax on the tile and the paint and things like that that you might buy. But on the other hand, according to business, nothing improves the property value or makes a business more valuable than good schools.
Yeah, and when you really looked at it, like I said, it was funny because I'd done a lot of presentation, and I went to a group down in Cocoa Beach, and I had two gentlemen come up to me before I started and say, son, there's nothing you can say here that's going to convince me to change my mind. And I said, understood, but I just want you to keep an open mind. So then after I did my presentation, they stood up and said, you changed my mind. And I said, can you tell me?
That never happens in politics.
I know. And I said, can you tell me what I said to change your mind? And he says, you mentioned, and which is true, 20 years ago I got transferred from Denver to come down here. And the first thing that I did was to make sure what was the quality of the school system in the area I was moving in. Because that was more important to me than malls or beaches. I want to make sure my kids were going to have a good education. And he says, 50 years ago, when my wife and I moved here, that's exactly what I did. And I want to make sure that other people have the same opportunity that I had, you had, and future generations may have.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Adrian, thanks for joining us here
Thank
today.
you.
We'll leave it there, and good luck with the campaign.
Thank you.
Well, that's our program. Thanks for joining us in the Florida Today newsroom. Remember, you can publish your reaction to this show or comment on anything you read in Florida Today. Just send an email to letters@floridatoday.com or reach me at facebook.com/MattReedNews. I'm Matt Reed. We'll see you next Wednesday right here on WEFS and FloridaToday.com.